My parents decided to do something so stupid. They gave away my college fund that my dear grandfather left after he passed away. Who'd they give it to? The golden child. My sister went behind my back and gave it to her. She doesn't even like school. She's done nothing but mess up her life. And now they take this away from me. Well, you know what? I'm going to sue them.
As a child, my late grandfather used to tell me that family was one thing in this world that would always support our dreams, make the best plans for us, and just push us to become better and successful people. But in my own case, my family wanted to destroy my dreams, tear my life apart. I grew up in a small extended family, and I was the second to last child of my parents. I had an older sister, Lori, who was 4 years older than me, and I don't know why, but she was my parents' golden child. I know it's pretty normal for parents to have their, own favorite child, but my parent made it so apparent that they would always pick Lori over me right from when I was a little girl. Though they would always talk of equal love for their children, right after they talked about that, they'd still go ahead and just do something that showed they did not love me and Lori equally. If I wanted something and Lori wanted the same thing, my parents would just prefer to give it to Lori because she was older. So they would say something like,
"We agreed to give this toy to your older sister because we know she'll take care of it better than you can."
And they would just discard my feelings like it was nothing. If it wasn't just about toys, say, for instance, if I wanted a dress, and Lori wanted one too, and my parents were only financially capable of getting one, well, they would get it for Lori, and their answer is because she's older. And they just believed it was wrong to neglect the older child. This continued to happen in so many instances. I was always hurt. And when they knew I was hurt, they would try to make me feel bad or punish me for being upset. In their words, they didn't want to spoil me because my mother's young sister was the last child of her parents. And they believe she got spoiled and lived a wild life because my maternal grandparents pampered her and gave her whatever she wanted. So, they didn't want me to end up like her. They would also convince me that they were doing the right thing, and they would emotionally manipulate me into believing that it was better for them to give my sister preferential treatment and not me. Somehow, my late paternal grandfather noticed this and made sure that I spent all my summer holidays at his place. Whenever I was with him, he would give me whatever I wanted, and trust me, as a young girl whose parents barely met my needs, I asked for everything. In addition, he owned a stable, and this made me going to just spend the holidays with him something I always looked forward to. But, on the other hand, Lori never liked going to Grandpa. She said she hates the smell of old people, and being around him would make her throw up. So she did everything possible to avoid going to his house or being around him at all. Eventually, my grandfather noticed her attitude towards him, so he chose to focus on the grandchild that loved being with him. And who was that? That was me. Because of my grandfather's love for me, I preferred to be with him more than my parents, to be honest. Even when my granddad visited us at home, he treated Lori and me equally. Okay, for example, he bought us the same number of toys, gifts, candies, or whatever he bought. I knew he was always trying to show my parents that they did not have to treat one child better, but no matter how many times that he did this, my mother, she would just stand her ground. So, I got used to it and tried to, not take any of their actions personally. Every time I returned from my holidays at my grandfather's house, my mom would make me share whatever Granddad gave me with Lori. She'd always preach about the love and sharing and how sisters should always share, but she never encouraged Lori to ever or make her spend time with Granddad. Instead, she'd push me to give Lori most of my stuff even if I didn't want to. You see, The funny thing was, she never asked Lori to share her stuff with me. It always had to be me. So, if Lori had something and I wanted something or part of it, my mother would yell at me and say I lacked contentment and I was a bad child because I had eyes for somebody else's food, property, or, well, anything. My father, too, was part of her, but he wasn't on her side most times. Anytime my father supported me and not her, it would always just turn into a fight, and she would accuse my dad of trying to spoil me and destroy my life. So we stopped supporting or defending me, and in the end, I had an entire family who treated Lori right, and treated me like they found me in the gutter. There would be no asking if Lori loved the attention, care, and gifts. Of course she did. And she always had a way of just rubbing it in my face, which was the most annoying part. Even as a teenager, if my parents did something to hurt me, she would say, "Don't worry, sis, we're doing this for your future." She would laugh and walk out on me. She even told her petty friends how her parents pampered her and gave her whatever she wanted, even if it was at the expense of my happiness, and I hated it. When I turned 13, I went to live with my grandfather because I couldn't take it anymore. It was easier for them to maltreat me when I was younger, but as I grew up, I felt choked. So I left. It was hilarious because the same Lori, their trophy child, she ended up being spoiled and careless about her life. Once my parents caught her doing drugs, and my mom was so mad she nearly hit her. Then, as if that was not enough, she gets pregnant by one college boy named Joshua when she was 16. He denied being the father, of course, denied being responsible for the pregnancy, so she raised the child alone. My parents were disappointed, but they still embraced her and she gave birth to a daughter. My parents groomed and cared for her while Lori continued to live carelessly. By the age of 21, Lori became a heavy alcoholic. She'd even go as far as stealing my mother's credit cards just to get what she needed her little fix. Or she tried to mimic my dad's signature so she could use his checkbook. Lori had become something else between the time that I lived with my grandfather at age 13 and by the time I returned age at 17 home. Unfortunately, my grandfather fell very ill and he passed away at 72. I was forced to return home, and I'd been with my grandfather from the time he fell sick. I cared for him and did everything I could. Even when he was taken to the hospital, I was there, right by his side, bedside, every single day. I slept there, woke up there, every night. The nurses were even worried that I would fall sick myself, but thankfully, I didn't. My grandfather became my rock in my world, and I knew how lonely this world would be if anything happened to him. My parents only dropped by the hospital a few times. That was it. My dad did not even have a great relationship with his own father, so when I got attached to my granddad, he believed his father would just be satisfied with that. But unfortunately, after everything the nurses and doctors did, grandfather, he didn't make it. At that time, I was a senior in high school and almost graduating. So, after my granddad's burial, I returned to my parents' house. I didn't have a choice. I cringed being at the house, but it was better than staying at my granddad's house alone. The memories we shared and so many things in that house made me emotional, and it reminded me of his absence, so I had to leave for the sake of my mental health. When I returned to my parents' house, it was evident that Lori was no longer the trophy child, but her daughter, Trisha, had taken her place. You see, Trisha was 4 years of age, and the longest I've been with her before going back home was playing with her chin as a baby. Her presence was still new to me, but I had to adjust. After my granddad's burial, my parents noticed that I was still mourning him, and though I was being a bit dramatic, if they asked me to do something or look after Trisha while they were gone, and I said I would not, they would yell at me and call me names. They'd even say I was being selfish because I cared more about myself and nobody else, but I would not change my mind no matter what they said. I guess when my mom realized I was no longer the little Alice that they could hurt with words, she began picking offense with everything I did. If I washed my coffee cup, didn't place it exactly well enough, she would call, yell at me, whatever. She'd yell at me if I stepped out of the kitchen and forgot to turn the light off. In fact, there was nothing I did that my mother did not see a reason to yell at me for, and if I yelled back at her in anger, she would report me to my father, and they would make the house miserable for me. After months of not coming home, Lori returned and my mom decided everyone would eat together. I did not want to always be seen as the family sheep, so I decided to join them for dinner that night. While eating, my father asked what I wanted to do after high school, and I told them that I'd started filling out college applications. My mother chipped in and she asked how I wanted to pay for college. Well, I was surprised because everyone knew my grandfather left me $80,000 with my dad before he passed away, and the money was my ticket to college. I casually responded and told them I planned on using the money my grandfather left me, and a weird silence followed. Finally, I guess I asked what was wrong, but nobody answered me, so we continued to eat. Some months before that, I've been hearing them chit-chat about Lori and how they were happy that she finally got into college. After Lori got pregnant in high school, she never mentioned college and spent most of her time just partying and hanging out with the losers. So when I heard them talking about it, I was happy for her. I never joined their conversation and pretended I was not aware of it. They would not lash out at me for being a terrible child and an eavesdropper. That evening, after dinner, I returned to my room and kept thinking about the reaction the whole night. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't place my fingers on it. Also, I wanted to be exactly comfortable, which I wasn't, that they asked me how I would fund my college, even when they knew I, had the $80,000 from Grandpa. The following day, while we were having breakfast together, pretending to be a big ol' happy family again, I asked them about the previous night and what they meant about the question. My mom turned to my dad and nodded. My dad looked at me and said they have redirected the $80,000 for Lori to go to college, because it would be inhumane of them to leave her there, the way she was, without trying to help her or do something positive for her future. At first, I thought it was a joke, so I laughed. I laughed pretty hard, actually, but when I noticed that nobody else was laughing with me, and they all had these pathetic looks, well, it dawned on me why they weren't joking. I turned in Lori's direction, and she did not even utter a word or even look at me. Instead, she pretends to be focusing on just feeding Trisha, and I turned to my parents. I asked them to admit that they were joking, look me in the eyes. They said this was no joke. I knew my parents always preferred Lori to me, and I didn't even care anymore. But I did not expect them to take my money and give it to Lori. I sat there for a couple minutes, and I could not say anything, and they could tell from my facial expressions that I was angry, heartbroken, disappointed at the same time. Finally, when I didn't say anything, my mom began to say that they did that because they did not want Lori to have a failed future, and would find a way for me to go to college. She also said that I was young still and did not have to go to college immediately like my friends. But if I insisted that I wanted to go, I could work for a couple of years or heck, even take a student loan. I'd heard enough at that point, so I stood up from the table angrily and went to my room. I could not talk or yell at them like I wanted to because they were already complaining about how insolent I'd become since I returned from Grandpa's house. Well, guys, the truth is, I was not insolent or rude. I just did not let them oppress or get to me with their words like they used to. I was just an angry teenager with terrible parents and was always tired of living under their roof. My expectation was that I'd get into college and just leave their house for good. I was sick of my mom yelling at me over every little thing. I was tired of seeing them pamper Lori and Trisha despite her mistakes, but they still treated me like I was forced upon them. Funny enough, my mom's attitude changed toward me during my silence. I was so angry that I did not talk to them for weeks. I spent most of the time at my friend's house, and I even ate dinner there. Wow. What they had done to me was not the same thing as forcing me to share stuff with Lori or give her a toy because she would take care of it better. No, what they've done to me, it was so much worse, so far worse than that, in fact. If I did not do anything about it, my chances of going to college would be absolutely slim to none. When this happened, Christmas was right around the corner, and my father begged me to at least join them for Christmas dinner. So I agreed.
What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story, man, this is a tough situation to be in for OP. There is 3 updates. Let me tell you right now, if you weren't a fan of Lori, you're not going to be a fan after the first sentence of update number 1. So guys, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for the support, and let's jump into this update. As soon as we started eating that day, Lori began to talk about colleges that she applied to, and she was so happy that the college in California accepted her. She'd be moving that following week. Of course, she did this because she knew that was the same college I've always dreamt of attending. I knew she was trying to rub it in my face. It was obvious, and it worked. Coupled with how angry I was, as if she had not done enough, she mockingly thanked my late grandfather for leaving the money behind because it helped her attend college. At that moment, I lost it. I yelled at her, "Take our grandfather's name out your mouth." And that's when my parents intervened. Trisha was sitting between Lori and me, so she starts crying when I yelled at Lori. My mother asked me to make Trisha stop crying, but I yelled again. Said I don't give a damn about Trisha. Then I screamed at my parents and let out the whole anger that I've been carrying around inside of me. I told them how much I hated them for everything they've done to me, and for explicitly trying to ruin my future. As I was crying and talking simultaneously, my mother begged to yell at me too. She said I'd ruin the Christmas dinner. The ham's gone cold. And it was very insensitive of me to be angry over my sister's success. She called me all sorts of names and said she knew I had always been jealous of the love she showered on Lori and not me. Hearing all of that even made me madder. I told her she was the worst mother in the world, and in my next life I would prefer to be an orphan than have a terrible mother like her. My father, he tried to stop it. He tried to stop me from talking, but I didn't listen to him either. I didn't care how they would see me after this. After our voices started to die down a bit, my mom said I had to deal with what happened. And if she was given the choice to pick between me and my sister, she would pick my sister over me. Well, she also said it was her idea to use the $80,000 for my sister's college fund, and I could do nothing about it. I laughed and said, "Well, you know what's funny about that, Ma? I'm suing you in court, and you're gonna return me that $80,000 whether you like it or not." When my mother heard that, she stopped talking and looked at me. Already they knew me to be the daughter that would do whatever I said I was to do. So she became calm. She said it had not gotten to that and we could settle it like family. I told her that could only happen if they gave me my money back. All of a sudden, Lori began to sob. She said I was self-centered and I wanted to ruin her future. She also said that she had never gotten jealous of everything my grandfather gave me, including the old truck I drive. The old truck had always been an issue, and I knew my parents were angry that my grandfather left his old truck for me and not Lori or my dad. Why would he do that? Lori never went to see him all the months he stayed in the hospital.
She said she hated the smell of hospitals and could not smell old people all day. He left her some of his old paintings, which weren't so valuable. I knew she was just emotionally trying to manipulate me, and honestly, even if she cried blood, I would not pick my sister's feelings or my parents over my future. When I saw that I was not, falling for Lori's little crocodile tears, my parents said they could only give me $10,000, since I insisted that I needed the money back, and the remaining $70,000 would be for all the money they spent on me from the day I was born. I told them I wasn't accepting that and did not ask to be born. Hello? They had no right to ask me to pay for the money that they spent on me when they decided to make me. At that point, I realized that my mom, most especially, did not love me. Later on, I found out that the reason she was always picking on me was because she hated her younger sister. My maternal grandparents ignored my mother's needs because she was the oldest child, and they showered all their love, money, and attention on my aunt. So it stirred a bit of hatred in my mother's heart, and she took it out on me, her daughter. And that's why she turned my father against me. My mom also said that from that month I'd be paying my rent and bills and would have to cook my own food. She claimed that since I was being insensitive and cold, she would also treat me the same way, and when I said I was not paying rent, she told me she would just kick me out if I refused. It's that simple. She wasn't bluffing. Although initially, when I threatened to take legal action if they did not refund my money, I was not really trying to do it. I was just trying to scare them. But after my mom said they would only give me $10,000 and the rest would be taken, oh boy, that lit a flame inside of me. That same day, I went online and posted here. I just asked if it was possible to sue my family for taking the $80,000 my grandfather left for me, and so many people said I could sue them if I had my granddad's will or any sort of documentation that did show he allocated the money to me. Fortunately for me, there was a video my grandfather recorded on his sickbed. It was with the help of his lawyer. He stated clearly, word for word, he was leaving $80,000 from me with my father, so he could give it to me when I was ready for college. And the craziest thing was that we all watched the video together, so it proved that the money was meant for me and not for Lori. For me. So, after all the advice I got online, I went to my late grandfather's lawyer and I explained everything. I told him my money was gone. My parents wanted to use it for Lori's college, not mine. They said I was being greedy. I didn't understand how I was being greedy just for wanting, my money back. And maybe my parents believed I'd just say, okay, with a cheerful smile after they would tell me my college money was poof, nada. As expected, my granddad's lawyer got angry and took up the case, and we sued them in court. 2 days later, my parents received the court order, they got served, and were so mad. I even returned from my friend's house to meet my property on our front porch that day. And when my mother saw me, she asked me to leave the house because she didn't want to see me anymore. So, I ended up moving into my cousin's house and never saw my parents again until a few days later in court. Before we went to court, my friend Stacy called me and asked me to check out what Lori posted on Facebook. So I logged in and checked Facebook and realized that Lori had been posting horrible things about me. She made numerous posts on Facebook with my pictures, even posted some flyers on our street with my photos and the inscription, "Greedy Cow." A few neighbors with my number called to ask me what was going on between Lori and me, and I could not explain it to them. I called my grandfather's lawyer and told him Lori was doing this to me, and he told me not to worry, and that he would simply just take care of it. Surprisingly, Lori did not stop there. She also made a live video of her burning some of my stuff that was still in the house, and I could hear my mother's voice in the background. The things she burnt were those my grandfather bought for me some weeks before he fell ill, and I did not have the opportunity to wear or use them yet, so I took them back home in pristine, excellent condition. And she even burned my favorite cashmere sweater and some new pairs of boots. Now, some people supported her actions because of the lies that she spread about me. Others commented and told her it was wrong to burn another person's property. I was really pained because those clothings, well, they weren't free. They cost a lot of money, and I hoped to wear them when I finally got to start college. The last straw that broke the, camel's back, is how they say, was when Lori came to my school and started handing out flyers of my picture and a poop emoji right there overlaying my face. I was mad. I confronted her online. I told her to take off the posts and videos that she's made or she would pay for it. But instead, she said she would continue to make my life miserable until I dropped the case and took the $10,000 my parents were offering. I told her that wouldn't happen, and she said she had just begun with me. Later that evening, she tagged me in a post on Facebook, and it was all screenshots of our conversation. She used silly captions, and they had more than 100 laughing reactions. She made it look like I was begging her to take down all of her posting. Then she cropped out the part she said she would continue to make me miserable. All of these were taking their toll on me, which was overwhelming, and I became a laughingstock in school, and most students nicknamed me Poop Face because of what Lori had done. Even though I almost graduated from senior high school, that was not the reputation I wanted to leave behind. I was just glad I had a supportive friend, and my grandfather's lawyer did give me much hope. Well, we'll fast forward now, finally, to the day of the court hearing. Well, Lori had to be present too because my lawyer sued her for defamation of character and destruction of property. She was surprised that I've taken it this far, but honestly, I didn't know she was even going to get sued. I just began to receive threatening messages from her, and in one of them, she mentioned that I was the worst sister in the world and wished I was dead because I sued her for destroying a few properties. Well, the court ruled in my favor, and the judge told my parents that they had no right to share the money that was meant for me. Well, it was even in court that I found out my grandfather had written a will before, and he actually wanted to share the money between my sister and me. But after he fell ill for almost 8 months, Lori never showed up at the hospital or even came to see him. He changed his mind and made me the new video. When Lori heard that, she began to cry. The court asked them to pay back my money in full, and Lori was asked to pay $5,000 for all the clothing and stuff that she burnt for her little live video and for spoiling my reputation. My mother was obviously angry and so mad, and I could see it in her facial expression. My father looked remorseful, but my sister did not. She was not going to college anymore, and she had damages to pay for, so there's no way she could be happy. So, it was a good thing that they had not used the money yet, and they gave me $60,000 that month cold hard cash. Then they promised to pay me back $3,000 every month until the money was done. With the court ruling in my favor, I knew I was no longer welcome to stay at the house. So I decided to return home and pack the rest of my things. When I got there, my mom was so mad to see me, and when I entered my former room, she began to yell at me, and I realized they had moved my stuff to the basement. I just ignored her, and with Stacy's help, we moved out what was left of the property. As I was about to leave the house and go to my truck, my mom said she was glad my grandfather was dead, so I would have nobody to turn to. I told her I still had her younger sister, the one she hated, and she asked me to go ahead and move in with her then. When she heard that, she got very angry and actually attacked me. She hit me in the face several times, and before my father could stop her, she bruised me and I was bleeding. Coincidentally, a neighbor saw her yell at me angrily and hit me afterward, so she called the police. The police came on over, And well, before Stacy and I left, they took our statements and they arrested my mother. She was charged with abuse, and that was the last time I saw her. I eventually went to college and I got into my dream college. I finished the college course with flying colors, and I'm now an independent woman. My mother passed away when she was 40, and I haven't heard from Lori since. I want nothing to do with them anymore because I know Lori did not kick against using my college fund for herself. She knew how much I wanted to attend college, but she valued her interest over me, which was a major red flag. Life is far better on my own, and I want nothing to do with them. I've made new friends, and they stuck with me through good and bad times. Well, that's going to be the rest of the updates. Thank you.
A lot of times, guys, the stories don't end up like this, and OP doesn't always get the better end of the stick. In this position, it looks like OP eventually got away from all the toxicness in the story, went on to go to college and live the life that OP wanted to live. But it was not an easy route. Guys, let me know your exact thoughts about this story. Drop it down below in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, what's up? My name's Mr. Reddito. I animate and narrate stories every single day, so stop on by, see what story we're up to for the day. Guys, have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one. I'll see ya!